The topic for today is, what do we mourn on Tisha? But I want to start with an introduction. Give some background. We say in the Siddur twice in the morning that the Creator is giving existence to the world continuously. In other words, the creation isn't a one-time event that took place in the past, and since then things exist because nothing has destroyed them. There's no inertia in existence. Everything is receiving divine energy, so to speak, or impetus to continue its existence. Now, Rabbi Lutzato, one of the great scholars and tzaddikim of the last 300 years, asks the philosophical question, why does the Kodesh Baruch Hu do that? Why is he continuously, so to speak, remaking or continuing to maintain the existence of the world? It didn't have to happen that way. He has the authority, the power, the ability to create something that should continue to exist on its own. He just didn't do it that way. Why not? And the answer that he gives is a spiritual answer. The purpose of human life, and that's epitomized by Jewish life, is to create a certain relationship with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. It's what's called in Hebrew dveikus, which means something like attachment to, focus on, interrelation with, experiencing together. And in order to have that kind of relationship with the Creator has to make himself available. He has to be accessible. The idea of a Creator giving the world existence and then going on vacation in infinite external reality would not make that possible. How does the Kodesh Baruch Hu make himself available to us to create that kind of attachment and relationship? And he does it by giving existence to the world continuously. So it means that this table continues to exist because there's a divine will giving it its existence. That divine will is manifesting itself in this table and in the air around us and in our own bodies and in our souls and everything else that exists. So the presence of the Kodesh Baruch Hu in the world is crucial to the spiritual purpose for which we are created. Without that, we wouldn't have it. Now, this is a fact equally true about everything in the world. Everything owes its existence from a grain of sand to the soul of Moses. Everything owes itself, its existence, to the will of the Creator giving it its existence. But to a great extent, it's hidden. And being hidden, it's harder to form a relationship with it. I'll give you a rough analogy. Here's something you all know, I'll bet you haven't thought of in 5 years. Everything is made of molecules. When's the last time you thought about that?
Earlier today. That's just me. Had a conversation about it.
Because that's not the sort of thing that catches your attention. You know it, it's in your memory bank, and you continue with the rest of your life irrespective of it. If the Kodesh Baruch Hu's making the world exist were simply a background knowledge, then it would be very difficult to construct a relationship with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. There have to be times where he manifests himself, makes himself visible, gives rise to events in the world or events in experience which are clearly communicational, so that you can, from that, appreciate something about how HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world, and what his purposes are, and what his values are, and then, with that, you can create a relationship. Not all places and times and people are equal in this regard. You've heard of prophecy. Prophecy is where a person has a direct experience of the Creator. maybe the word direct will be too ambiguous. He's experiencing the Creator and knows he's experiencing the Creator. And so therefore, it's certainly a communication of a Kadosh Baruch Hu's presence to that person. If you stood at the Red Sea with the Jewish people encamped next to the Red Sea, and on this side and this side a range of mountains, and in the gap between the mountains, the Egyptian army is bearing down on them, and there's no escape. And they say to Moses, "Help!" And Moses says to Kadosh Baruch Hu, "Help!" Kadosh Baruch Hu says, "I don't want to hear your prayers. Now's no time for that. Go into the water." Yeah, but it's water. I mean, how far can we go? Go into the water. And Moses says to the people, "Don't worry. Everything's going to be all right." No boats, no life preservers, nothing. And then the sea splits. And they go across, and then the Egyptians charge into the sea, and the sea closes around them and drowns. If you saw that, you wouldn't have any question in your mind where it came from. It's not possible to understand it in any other way. Especially since Moses says it's going to happen, and it happens exactly as he says it's going to happen. So that's a communication. Because Rabbi says, I'm showing you my presence. Because I want you to understand what my purposes are, what my priorities are, so that you can think in terms of creating a relationship with me. And when the people complain that there's no food, and Moses says, there will be food. When you wake up, it'll be all around you, and the manna is all around them. Daily, except for Shabbos, for 40 years. A repetitive miracle goes on for years. No one else before has ever seen anything like it, nor since. You know that Kadosh Baruch Hu is feeding you. He's feeding you because he cares about you, because he wants you to survive. These manifestations are something which enable the construction and the maintenance of a relationship. Well, they went through the 40 years. They came into the land of Israel. They started to live in natural terms. Many became farmers. Others raised animals. Others worked in production, clothes, furniture, weapons, seafaring. A lot of the miraculous evidence and manifestation of the Kadosh Baruch Hu's presence was lost because the Kadosh Baruch Hu wanted a different form of living. But it did continue in many respects. First of all, the Mishnah tells us that in the temple there were 10 continuous miracles. And that's not an oxymoron. Although some people make the mistake of thinking something that happens over and over and over again can't be a miracle by definition. That's certainly not correct. For example, the sacrifices in the temple meant that the temple, to a certain extent, was like a giant abattoir. Animals are being slaughtered and butchered, and blood is being poured out on the altar. And then limbs and parts of the animal are waiting to be burned on the altar, and then they are burned on the altar. What would you expect in an open air project like that? One thing you would expect is flies. Lots and lots of flies. Blood attracts flies. Meat attracts flies. There were never any flies in the temple. Never. Or the smoke from the altar always went straight up. Well, it can be windy in Jerusalem. It can even rain in Jerusalem. The fire never went out, and smoke always went straight up. So you went to the temple and you saw in front of you, saw in front of your eyes, these miracles, which are manifestations of a Kadosh Baruch Hu's presence, which you know intellectually applies everywhere in the world at all times, but you don't see it. Here you see it. During that period of time, for 400 years before the first temple, and lasting all the way through the existence of the first temple, you had prophecy. And our sources tell us there were 1,200,000 prophets during that period of time, 600,000 men and 600,000 women. Every Jew who was alive interacted with prophets. So much so that the Ramban says, quoting Chazal, what is a doctor, physician, doing in the house of those who fear Hashem? Because if you have a physical problem, from the point of view of our perspective, every physical problem is a symptom. And in medicine, they'll tell you, don't treat the symptom, treat the disease. The disease is a spiritual condition. Something's wrong with the person's spiritual condition and manifests itself in this physical symptom that includes the bacteria in the bloodstream. That's just a symptom. And then you go to the prophet and ask the prophet, what does Hashem want from me? What needs to be corrected? He tells you, you correct it, and the physical symptoms disappear. When you do that, you're having a direct interaction with someone who hears God speak, and you know it's special because he knows how to get rid of those physical symptoms, and nobody else does. He's right every time. Others are not right every time. So clearly, you're dealing with something that's above and beyond the natural, and it's a way of feeling HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence in the world. So the temple was part of this structure of revealing HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence in the world. Now, when the first temple was destroyed, that triggered the decline of prophecy, so much so that when they started the second temple, the Jewish authorities included the last of the prophets, and then prophecy ceased, 2,600 years ago approximately. Second temple did not have any prophecy. The second temple did not have those 10 miracles, those continuous miracles. So says the Tosfos Yeshonim and Yuba, for those who know the sources. So the manifestation of God's presence in the second temple period was much, much reduced. Now, given all of that background, the Gemara says that when the destruction of the first temple took place, so the rabbinic authorities decided that this has to be commemorated. We have to mourn over the temple, and they have to choose a day on which to mourn over the temple. Well, our sources tell us that the Babylonians conquered Jerusalem, and on the 9th of Av, towards late afternoon, they set the temple on fire. And the temple burned through the night of the 10th and into the morning of the 10th. And the question arose, which day shall we choose to commemorate the destruction of the temple? The 9th or the 10th, since the vast majority and the end of the destruction of the temple took place on the 10th. And one, I think it's Rabbi Yehuda, said it should be the 10th. But the majority chose the 9th. Why? Rabbi Soloveitchik, from whom I had the privilege to hear many, many lectures, said, we're not commemorating the destruction of a building. We're commemorating the loss of God's presence in the building. The Babylonians could not chase God's presence out of the building. They had no control over that. And as long as God's presence was manifest in the building, they couldn't have burned it either. First, the HaKadosh Baruch Hu abandoned the building. Then when the building was just a physical structure, then they could burn it. When did he abandon it? Well, they set it alight in the late afternoon of the 9th. So it means it was on the 9th that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence deserted the building. What we commemorate is the loss of Hashem's presence, not the burning down of the stones and the timbers and the draperies and the rest. It's the loss of that manifestation that we mourn and that we commemorate in the mourning for the temple. Similarly, I don't know whether you read these things or not. If you didn't read them, you didn't miss them. But this time of year, every year, there are supposedly learned and sophisticated essays criticizing the traditional world for mourning the destruction of the temple and destruction of Jerusalem on the grounds that, look at Jerusalem today. It's all built up. It's restored. It's expanded. It has vast highways, and it has multi-story buildings, and it has sports stadiums, and it has concert halls, and it has museums. How could you talk about the destruction when you see this built, thriving city all around you? Well, 3 times a day, every weekday of the year, we pray for the rebuilding of Jerusalem. And that blessing, where we ask for this, says the following: into the city of your city, Jerusalem, in your mercy, return. We're asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu to return. You should dwell in it. That's the second request. Please return to it. Please dwell in it. The third is rebuild it. The idea wasn't put the bricks together and restore the structures. That's not what we mourn in the ninth of Av, and not what we're looking forward to in the future. What we're looking forward to is the return of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence to the city. And of course, once there's a return, then the city can be rebuilt. To think that because we have concert halls and art museums and sports arenas, that therefore we should not mourn the destruction of the temple. We're mourning the lack of God's presence. And I give a parable for this, a bitter contemporary parable. You probably know the goal of the Muslim world is to conquer the rest of the world. Only Muslim states are legitimate, only Sharia law is legitimate, all the rest is illegitimate, and they're out to conquer the whole world. Israel is the starting point, and after Israel, Europe, where they have a lot of supporters already. America's next. The idea is global domination. Let's suppose, God forbid it happens. They conquer America, there's a lot of destruction, a lot of battle, and then they have to decide what to do in governing the country. And the Muslims decide, we're going to rebuild Washington just the way it was before. We have plenty of photographs, we have building plans, the Congress, the White House, the Supreme Court building. We're going to rebuild all of them. We're just going to use them for a different purpose. The Congress building will be the largest library of Sharia law in the world, and the White House will be a giant mosque where we'll celebrate Allah and jihad and so forth and so on. Everything will look picture postcard, just as it did when it was an American institution. And now it's going to be used for Muslim purposes. Now, let's imagine Philip Brown from Iowa. The Congress is complete, the rebuilding is complete, and he's going on a visit to see Washington. Is he going to glory in the rebuilding of Washington when it's housing the Muslim atrocities and the Muslim oppression? I don't think so. I don't think he's going to be happy that the buildings were restored, because they were restored for the wrong purpose. It's not a question of buildings. It's not a question of architecture. It's a question of what's represented there. What values, what goals, what worldview is represented there. The same thing is true here. The rebuilding of Jerusalem as it is presently is something which, in its external form, is something which we cannot celebrate. Now, I say in its external form, there are a lot of yeshivas in Jerusalem. There are a lot of religious institutions, religious courts, Sephardi communities, Hasidic communities. All of this is precious. All of this is a success. But that's not what the external critic appeals to when he says we shouldn't mourn the destruction of Jerusalem. He's not saying because the Belzer Hasidim built a palace here, therefore we shouldn't mourn the destruction. He's talking about the sports stadiums and the concert halls and the museums and the highways and all the rest. Well, if that's his view of rebuilding, he's missed the point entirely. Now, the literature that talks about Kadosh Baruch Hu's presence in the temple and how it relates to us is very often the literature of a parent to his children. The literature quotes a heavenly voice, "Woe to the father whose children are not at his table, and woe to the children who are not at his father's table." Halacha takes this very literally. So, for example, I'll give you an example, and then I'll come to how it works in the temple. When you want to get married, you as a man will have to present something to the woman of value. You give it to her, she takes possession of it, and through that action, the marriage is effected. It's got to be yours. If you stole it, it won't work. Or if it's something that's forbidden to have any, it has no value because it's forbidden to have any value from it, it doesn't work. It's got to be yours and it's got to be of real value. Well, let's see. Suppose it's Shabbos and someone invites you for a meal. And they put down in front of you a plate of food. What now is the status of that food? Have they given it to you? Have you taken possession of that food? It's now your food, and if so, if you gave it to a woman, you could get married that way. Is that correct?
Until you take a bite, right?
What?
Not until you take a bite, you have to enact your ownership over it.
Oh, let's suppose you make this symbolic ownership gesture of lifting it up, which is the way you take possession of things in Jewish law, one of the ways that you take possession of things. Well, let me ask you a question. They put the food in front of you. If it's yours, then you'd be perfectly justified in throwing it down the toilet. It's your food. You can do with it as you please. Many feel that you can't do that. What they have done is they've given you permission to eat their food. You have permission to eat their food. That doesn't make it your food. And therefore you can't do with it as you please. Indeed, you shouldn't take it and give it to a woman and get married with it because they wanted you to eat it. So this is the idea that you're eating from their food. Now in the temple, the Kohanim, from almost all sacrifices, ate some of the sacrifice. And certain sacrifices, the person, the non-Kohen, who brought the sacrifice, also eats part of the sacrifice. What is he doing? Is it that he brings the animal to the temple and it's slaughtered, that blood is poured out on the altar one way or another, and then you have the rest of the parts of the meat, and some parts go on the altar, some parts go to the Kohanim, some parts go to the owner, and just each person gets his parts? So our to us to say no. He's eating at a Kadosh Baruch Hu's table. Kadosh Baruch Hu is sitting at the head of the table, and he invites you to eat from the consecrated food which belongs to him and not to you. And therefore you can't use it to marry a woman because it's not yours. It never becomes yours. That's why there are strict rules about how you can eat it, what you can do with it, and when it becomes disqualified. If a certain amount of time passes, then it's no longer qualified to be eaten. So the manifestation here is, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, this is my place of dwelling. And to put it in crude terms, this is my house. You are my guests. You're my guests. And as my guests, I provide you with certain things that you can do in my house, but then how do you feel? You feel like you're in his house. The verses in the Torah and the statements in the Talmud illustrate this in a very striking way. There's a verse that says, Mikdashiti Ro, have awe for my temple. The Talmud expresses a Jewish reaction to that idea. Awe for a building? Awe for a building? A building? Why would you have awe for a building? So the Talmud says, no, it means awe for the one whose presence is manifest in that building. Okay, so that it means really having awe for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But there are two problems with that idea. Number one, there's another verse, Es Hashem Elokecha Tira, which tells you to have awe for the Creator. And number two, why then say it about the building altogether? What's the point of saying it about the building? And one answer is this. Okay, I'm supposed to have awe for the Creator of the universe. How do I express that? What do I do to manifest that? If someone for whom I have awe or reverence would walk into the room, I would stand up out of respect. But that's not going to happen. So where do I have the vehicle for expressing my awe for Kadosh Baruch Hu? And the answer is, well, you come into contact with those things which represent him directly, and you behave in a certain way under those conditions, that's how you express awe for him. So you only come into the temple when you're pure. You only come in for the sake of a certain service that you have to do. As soon as the service is over, you leave. You make sure to focus your mind on what you're doing and not be distracted. You go in with an attitude of awe and of love and of dedication. All of that is to how you show awe for the one whose presence is manifested in the building. So having the building there and having the manifestation of the Kodesh Baruch Hu there enables me to act out my relationship with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. Indeed, you know that we have pilgrimage festivals. Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot are pilgrimage festivals. Jews are supposed to come from wherever they are, if they can, and come and present themselves in the courtyard of the temple and to present the sacrifice there. And the verbs in the Torah are, you should be seen. You should come to see or come to be seen. Yira, it's a lot of complexity with the verbs that are being used. The Rabbi Bachai, who says something extremely profound. First of all, you come presenting yourself before Kodesh Baruch Hu, and Kiviyachol, he sees you. That is to say, you're conscious of his seeing you. Really, it's happening all the time, and really seeing is a gross minimization of the fact that Kodesh Baruch Hu knows everything intrinsically. But you come there and you present yourself there because that's the place where he manifests his presence. That's where you feel that you come to be seen. But there's another way of reading the verb, which is not you come to be seen, but you come to see. Okay, then what is it that you come to see? And according to, I believe Rabbi Chai, according to what you see is, you see how he sees you. He reveals to you how he sees you. That's very precious. You all know, by observing other people, that sometimes people aren't objective about themselves. You've all seen people who fool themselves or out of touch with what's really going on. You've all seen that. Of course, it's always other people, right? It couldn't be true of you also, could it? No. You always see yourself perfectly. It's just other people who are out of touch. Yeah, but when you look around and you see other people out of touch, you think, I also have 2 arms and 2 legs, 2 eyes and 2 ears. Maybe I could also be out of touch. You know, maybe I'm also not getting myself quite right. To go to the temple and to see how Kodesh Baruch Hu sees you would be an extremely precious experience. You'd have an insight into yourself, which would be unparalleled. Indeed, there is one explanation for a certain type of suffering after death, which makes this very vivid. There's a Mishnah, a commentary that says that a person can't be punished for any crime that he did in his lifetime unless he condemns himself. Unless he condemns himself. So you think, that's it. Scot-free. I just won't condemn myself. Okay, but you know what the Kodesh Baruch Hu does? He brings people in front of you who are doing what you're doing, but it's not you. It's not you, it's somebody else. So then there's no subjectivity involved. Very often, we're very happy to condemn other people for doing things, even though we do them, we don't associate it. So this picture goes as follows. A person dies, and the first thing that happens is his own memory of his own life disappears. What's called amnesia. Amnesia is not losing your memory. You don't forget how to ride a bicycle. Amnesia means you lose the loss of your own history. You don't forget how to dial a telephone or how to eat supper. You just forget your own history. Okay, so now he's without any consciousness of who he is, and then his whole life is paraded before him, and he's asked to pass judgment when he doesn't know that it's him. And he sees and he passes objective, unbiased, without apology, judgment. And then after all of that, memory is restored. Aha. That's what I did. That's what I lived with. That's what I performed. And then working through that pain and that self-realization is part of the progress that you make after death. Here, you get it while you're alive. Because you go to the temple and you see yourself as the Kodesh Baruch Hu sees you now. That's because He cares about you, and he wants you to have this self-realization so as to understand yourself better and live a better life. So when you go to the temple, and this happens, you feel the caring of someone who creates you, who gives you your existence and all your resources, and wants your success. He wants your good. That's a very precious thing. And then you can come to have a relationship with him. The expression, but after this I'm going to stop for questions for a while. I mean, one more point. There's a expression in Chazal about forming a relationship. K'mayim panim el panim. When you look at your reflection, there it's talking about in water, because in still water you can see a very good reflection, and the mirrors weren't everywhere. What happens when you look in the mirror is that your face projects a certain image at the mirror, and then the mirror reflects that image back to you so you can see it. It's a two-part process. There's a projection from your face to the mirror, and then back from the mirror to. That can also happen between people. If A projects a certain attitude or feeling towards B, often B will pick up that attitude, that feeling, and project it backwards. You maybe, it's too old for you to have learned about it, but there was a phraseology: smile and the whole world smiles with you. Cry and you cry alone. Second half isn't always true, but the first half is definitely true. You can even try this as an experiment. Make up your mind one morning, you're going to walk around and watch what people do. Even people who are indifferent to you or may not even like you. But a smile is almost irresistible. Babies smile by reflex. And parents then smile back, and it creates a bond. So the Kodesh Baruch Hu shows you that he cares about you, shows you that he's investing in you, shows you that he loves you. Then it's very natural to project backwards that feeling of love that you experience from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Where do you experience it? When do you experience it? There are many avenues, but the temple was a grand avenue of this, because of the way the Kodesh Baruch Hu made himself available to be experienced in the temple. So all of this goes into the ingredients of creating a relationship with the Kodesh Baruch Hu, which is the purpose for which he recreates the world. He recreates the world so as to be available for creating that relationship. That's what we said so far. Questions up to here.
So, the times that the second base and Mikdash Rabbi said that Hashem didn't make himself as accessible.
That's
right.
Like,
I'm just wondering at that time, did they feel like that was the end or be all? Like they were in the times of Mashiach, this is as good as it's going to get? Because it's on a lower level, it doesn't quite sound like
it's very tricky. They understood it very well. There are verses that say that when you come back to Israel, the miracles and revelation that Kodesh Baruch Hu will give you will be greater than it was in leaving Egypt. And that certainly didn't happen. So in a certain sense, the second temple, certainly not the temple that was promised by the prophets. It's not the return that was promised by the prophets. Certainly wasn't the Messianic era that was promised by the prophets. So it was a kind of interim crutch for organizing the people for a longer period of time, 420 years as opposed to 410. But it was not the promised end to history. And they knew that very well. They could see that very well. Yeah.
About being punished for only what you condemn in yourself, you don't necessarily have to wait till, with the example of death and seeing your life with amnesia. Having children who have some of your less positive characteristics can let you see very clearly some of your own behaviors from
That's a very interesting remark. People often think in positive terms. Look at the wonderful characteristics my children have. And of course, that's because I'm wonderful, so that's why they have it. But you're absolutely right. You have to live with the fact that sometimes your failures get projected onto the next generation as well.
Even just traits. I mean.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So, how does the remorse or guilt or shame or whatever that you feel in life about, whatever wrong you've done in life, how does that affect when you pass away?
Okay, so this is very important. My oldest son, who's very knowledgeable and very wise, said to me a long time ago, maybe 20 years ago, everyone dies with regrets. So I thought, well, I mean, you make mistakes, and later you realize it was a mistake, you wish it hadn't happened, and you die with regrets. And it was, initially, I felt it was like painful. When you die, you don't die with satisfaction, you don't die with the sense of accomplishment. We do, but not only, you also have that, the sinking feeling in your stomach, oh yeah, I did that. But then I realized that there's an upside to it as well. Because the way you deal with the things that you failed at is to do tshuva. Tshuva really erases any responsibility for the action. And the liability, I should say, no liability. Tshuva, as the Rambam puts it, is a barrier that stops punishment. If a person does tshuva, there's no punishment. One element in tshuva is regret. So now, let's say a person did something bad and he regrets it. Well, if he really regrets it, it really pains him that he did it, that regret is something which is very positive. It means he's doing tshuva, which means that he's rectified it to the extent that it's possible to rectify, and it will stop any punishment. So there should be, in a sense, a satisfaction of regret. And the satisfaction is, at least I didn't deny it. At least I didn't tough it out. I wasn't brazen. I didn't try to justify it. I took responsibility for it. I realized it was wrong. And I'm sorry that I did it. That's a positive accomplishment. Of course, that doesn't remove the pain. It's a positive accomplishment because you feel the pain. If you didn't feel the pain, it wouldn't be a positive accomplishment. But it's a very positive thing to really feel regret for something that you've done wrong. You know very well, and again, we all see this in other people. We just don't recognize it ourselves. How often when you catch somebody doing something wrong and you point it out to him, does he fail to admit it? He looks for an excuse, or he makes up a story, and he doesn't take responsibility. So, Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Chassidus, said, if you see something, you have to ask yourself, why did the Kodesh Baruch Hu cause me to see this? What am I supposed to learn from the fact that I saw it? Instead of thinking about the other person, and thinking about his failure, thinking about his weaknesses, ask yourself, what in myself needs correction and improvement, which I see as a problem in these people as well. And that way you turn it to something positive internally, rather than remaining with it just as a critique, which can be very negative, of what the other person is doing. Criticizing what the other person is doing is a way of avoiding facing the failures that you have of your own. So that's one of the things that in the temple, Kodesh Baruch Hu gives you a vision of yourself to be able to deal with yourself in the best possible way. Yeah.
In regards to prophecy, you mentioned that there were 1,200,000 prophets during that period. That's a lot of people who have direct access to God.
That's right.
Telling people what to do. How do you go wrong with that situation?
Oh, so let me. I should clarify here, because there are different concepts or different facets or dimensions of prophecy. The understanding of prophecy that I'm working with, there are others and it's complicated, but the one I'm working with is this. Prophecy is a certain relationship between the prophet and the Kodesh Baruch Hu. He may not be sent to say anything to anybody. Sometimes the prophet is sent with a message to other people, but that's not the essence of prophecy. The essence of prophecy is achieving a certain relationship with the Kodesh Baruch Hu, where he makes himself available to the prophet in a certain way so that he sees things that others don't see, knows things that others don't know. He's inspired in a way that other people aren't inspired. Right? But he doesn't have to go tell people what to do. Number one. That's number one. Number two, it's important to have a very robust respect for free will. One of the prophets, named Jonah, received a prophecy from HaKadosh Baruch Hu with a direct command. I want you to go to a city called Nineveh and tell them that they have to change their policies, because otherwise there's going to be a disaster. HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells him, go to Nineveh and speak. You know what Jonah does? He gets on a ship for Tarshish, which is in the opposite direction. Right after the prophecy, he has the capability, using his free will to say, no, I'm not doing that, and to rebel. So it isn't as if, because there's prophecy, things can't go wrong. Even for the prophet, things can go wrong.
Right, but God still makes him end up at Nineveh. So there's an element of taking away the free will. God didn't let him abandon his mission.
Well, yes and no. He did not take away his free will. He could have not prayed up on the boat, not asked for help, and died on the boat. He asked. He prayed for help. He prayed to be restored.
Yeah, but isn't that kind of like putting a gun to someone's head and saying,
Same thing happened in Marcia.
One second. This is very important. So let's say someone puts a gun to someone's head. In our case, you bow to the idol or I kill you. Does he have free will or not?
he has free will?
Of course he has free will. How many millions of people have chosen to die rather than do what the guy with the gun tells them to do? Doesn't mean you don't have free will. It changes the dynamics of the choice. It changes the responsibility for success and failure. Doesn't mean you don't have free will.
Change your entire relationship with God. It changed your relationship with
Yeah.
God of, you're going to do it whether you like it or not.
No, that's not true. That's not true. Because Jonah, he could have chosen not to pray to God from the ship. Because Baruch Hu could have gotten another prophet.
Like if there's only negative consequences, what I'm saying is like it seems like there were only negative consequences available to him.
But people can tolerate negative consequences if they're determined enough not to do. There were genuine prophets
Isn't that
who
a challenge
became
of free will?
what?
Isn't that a challenge of free will though?
If by challenge you mean that the right decision becomes easier and the wrong decision becomes harder, that's not a challenge. We take that for granted. Not all decisions are equally difficult to make, and conditions can change that. A challenge to free will would be that there are conditions under which you lose your free will entirely. That would be a challenge.
Isn't
Even
that
that exists.
also something
Even that exists
that
sometimes,
from
but
Houses?
only in very, very extreme cases.
All right, I'm going to piggyback off your question. So, we know that when Hashem originally told Yonah to go and warn the city of Nineveh, he actually just ran away, right? He went in the opposite direction, like you said. But then, like you also said, on the boat, he had the opportunity to either die or just pray to be restored. Him praying to be restored, was that a form of tshuva?
Well, first of all, he didn't do it on the boat. They threw him overboard.
After they threw
Right.
him.
But he was put in the position, that creature that swallowed him. And then it's up to him what he's going to do. There he said, please, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, restore me, and so forth and so on.
Him going back to Nineveh, was that a form of tshuva?
Yeah.
Okay.
Even
So
though
this is just a setup for my main question here. Was he diminished by the fact that he didn't go to Nineveh originally, that he had to go like this roundabout way, do tshuva, and go back? Is he less for the fact that he had to do tshuva, or is he better?
No.
Or does it make no difference at all?
Well, he's definitely less. You don't justify rebelling against the Kodesh Baruch Hu on the ground that you do tshuva. No, it would have been better had he not failed. It would have been better had he not failed. It was a crime. What he did was a crime. It was wrong. It doesn't justify the crime when you do tshuva. It repairs the crime, because the Kodesh Baruch Hu, in his loving kindness, gives you the opportunity not to commit actions which damn you, which sink you, which you, right?
I'm not saying it justify the crime. I'm saying, is he still, is he less
Let me put it this way, although it's a little tricky. If you say that he's done a better job when he's done tshuva and gone back after doing tshuva, that would be an argument that it would be right to commit the crime in the first place. Because in the end, you get a better job. And that's wrong because a crime is a crime. You're not allowed to do it.
That's definitely not what I'm arguing.
So then I don't understand what the point is.
I'm saying, the fact that he had to go through this,
Yeah.
the fact that he was in a position where he had to do tshuva at all, does that make him less? Would he
Less
have been
than what?
less than if he had just gone and did exactly what God told him in the first
Certainly
place? Less than if he
not.
had
Certainly
done-
not, because having to do tshuva means you committed a crime. And you're better off not committing crimes.
So he's less than.
Sorry?
So he's less. He's
Of
less for
course,
it.
of course.
Right. And this is what, just like the next best thing he could have done? Doing the tshuva? I'm like, what
You
does
can
Of
it
do it
course,
the
I
right way
mean,
or you can do it pretty much.
it would have been better not to commit the crime. Having committed the crime, you can repair it doing tshuva. Yes, there are sources that say that about tshuva is superior. Okay, that's a long, complicated thing. If you ask for a choice, if you ask which, I have two paths in front of me: commit the crime, do tshuva and go, or just go. Just go is better. It's the right choice. You don't justify. A crime by the grounds just you could do tshuva.
I have kind of piggyback off of his thing. General question about Jonah. His story's kind of very strange in the sense that it's at an indeterminate time. We don't know when it happens, or maybe we do. I from the text, there's no real clear answer when it happened. No really clear answer of like what happens at the end of the story. So. Is there subtext that's not?
Well, wait a minute. We do have a very clear description of what happens. What happens is that Kodesh Baruch Hu accepts their tshuva and does not punish them, does not destroy them.
No, but it ends with him having this conversation with God. Why did you destroy the tree that I let? This tree that was giving me shade. Why can't you just kill me? And then God says, "Oh, you consider this tree so important, but you were okay with the death of the city." It's been a while.
Yeah, okay, but I'll just say that it's he had the pleasure from the gourd that grew on the tree, gave him shade, and then when it disappeared and the weather was impossible to, so he regretted the loss of the gourd. Because Baruch Hu gave him something which he appreciated, and then took it away and asked him, "You regret the fact that it disappeared, you're angry and upset that the fact that it disappeared, then the message is, you're not sitting in my seat. Why don't you, so to speak, empathize with me? All these people are my creatures. I invested in all of these creatures. And you're saying, wipe them out? What does it matter to you? You worried about a gourd, I should worry about my creatures?" He's criticizing him for a lack of, so to speak, empathizing with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. That message is sent straight. It's sent straight. So of course, maybe empathize is too strong a word. At least sympathize. We have a mitzvah. One of the 650 commandments is we should have godly characteristics. Mahu avata. Just as he is merciful, so you should be merciful. Just as he is gracious, you should be gracious. Just as he is holy, you should be holy. I think the right intuition about that is, are you kidding? The infinite creator, I should be like him? Isn't that impossible? Isn't that unthinkable? I mean, why would you want me to be like him? It's like out of it's off the page. And then you're reminded of the famous verse in Genesis. He created us with his essential characteristics, so to speak. Tselem means, not a picture, there's no visual connotation to the word tselem. Tselem means with something of the same characteristics, which means he created us with the capability of having that kind of attributes. The created human analog of his kindness and his mercy and so forth and so on. So at that point, it means that we have to think of what we know about his attitudes towards the world, and we have to absorb, almost always, those attitudes for ourselves. And this is where Jonah is being criticized. You had pity on something which gave you simple personal pleasure. I created these people, and many animals, it says at the end, Ubehema Rabbah. I created these people, and they don't know what they're doing, and they're not capable of taking full responsibility for themselves. And you're simply acquiescing; they should all disappear in a moment of divine punishment, and you're not thinking in terms of the loss to me. There's a phrase that's used in our literature over and over again when wicked people, they're dying. Maaseh yadai tovim b'yam. My creatures, the work of my hands, are drowning in the river. That's said about the Egyptians. From a Kodesh Baruch Hu's point of view, his creatures are drowning in the river. Yeah. And you're indifferent to that? You just snap your fingers and say, let divine justice destroy them? You're not living in terms of your relationship to me when you do that. You're not representing me when you do that. Indeed, there are certain prophets who criticized the Jewish people, and they suffered terribly for that. Kodesh Baruch Hu said, I didn't give you prophecy for you to criticize my children. I gave you prophecy to communicate what I wanted you to communicate to them. But I didn't give you prophecy to criticize my children. If you're representing me in the world, you don't have the right to criticize them unless I tell you. Otherwise, you're falsifying my attitude. They're my children. Try talking one Sunday to a father about the faults of his child and see what kind of response you get. So it's a failure to, so to speak, identify with the Kodesh Baruch Hu's relationship to the situation and to act in terms of his feeling for the situation. Hal says one of the expressions of love for Kodesh Baruch Hu is to see Jews who aren't relating to Kodesh Baruch Hu in the appropriate way and to motivate them to create a better relationship with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. He says, if you love somebody and he has a child who is engaging in self-destructive behavior, what greater favor could you do for your friend than to help the child overcome that behavior? What favor could you do that he will love you more for than saving his child? What does a parent love more than his children? So if you identify with the Kodesh Baruch Hu, you want to repair that. I'll finish with one last remark in this regard. I sort of strayed a little bit from the original topic. We were talking before about performing a crime and so forth and so on. It's a very strange thing. You have the golden calf, and the men participated in it in some way or other, and those firstborn who were supposed to be the priests of the Jewish nation, and who even functioned as the priests prior to that, lost it. And it was given to the Levites because they didn't participate. Okay, now what about Aaron? Aaron made it. He made it. And he becomes the high priest. Isn't that a little strange? Those who participated by giving money lost their priesthood. And he, who actually made it, becomes the high priest. So the first thing you have to know is that whatever Aaron's motivation was, making the Egel was wrong. Because it says in the book of Deuteronomy, Vayomer Hashem lashmido, Hashem said he wanted to destroy Aaron, to destroy him for that crime. Moses prayed for him, and that's how he survived. Okay, so it was definitely a crime. But then, why does it become the basis of his becoming the high priest? Because what was Aaron's motivation? This is similar to Yonah. They're both crimes. He said the people first went to Miriam's son Hur, and they asked him to make it, and he said no, and they killed him. So Aaron knew they meant business. Now Aaron is himself a priest, and he's a prophet. If they kill him, there's no way back. We learned that from the end of the first temple. So that being the case, he said there's two possibilities here. Either I say no, like Hur said no, and I get killed, and I'm a martyr, and I go to the highest place in heaven, and the people are destroyed. Or I make it, doing the wrong thing, no question about it. I make it. And then they're guilty only of making a replacement for Moses. This is a long story, which I have to tell you sometime. It's not idol worship, it's just a replacement for Moses, and it's wrong, and they'll pay their penalty for this crime, but it's a much lesser crime. So yeah, I know that I shouldn't do this, and I know that, but I can't abide the idea that they'll perform such a great crime as killing me, and therefore damage their relationship with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. I can't stand that. It's wrong because the Kodesh Baruch Hu said not to do it. No such calculations, don't do it. But he did it. But now, what was his failure? His failure was, I can't abide a breach in the relationship between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the Jewish people. That's the function of a priest. The function of a priest is to mediate the relationship between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the Jewish people. So the very character which led him to the crime, that very character is the ideal character for a priest. And that's how he ends up being the high priest in spite of the crime. But the crime is a crime, so much so that only Moses' prayer saved him from being punished by death.
Okay, well, so what could he have even done in that situation then? Kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, no?
That's what we were just.
You know, I'll tell you this. This is the last thing I'm going to tell you. There's a statement in the Gemara like this: you see somebody doing something wrong, and you know that he trusts you, and you know you could convince him not to do it. But under certain circumstances, let's say you have the same failure, you shouldn't tell. You shouldn't tell. About years it bothered me. What do you mean? He's doing the wrong thing, and I can change it. I'm saving him from doing the wrong thing. I'm saving Kodesh Baruch Hu's world from having all these crimes in it. Why shouldn't I talk to him? Until I realized my job is not to save the world. My job is not to make the world a better place. My job is to do for the world what Kodesh Baruch Hu tells me he wants done for the world. If Kodesh Baruch Hu wants this guy to stop doing it, he'll send somebody else to do it. I'm not responsible for the overall state of the world, and I'm not responsible for improving the world. I'm responsible for making the contribution that I see is going to, that Kodesh Baruch Hu tells me is my contribution to the world. And he says, in these conditions, he's doing the wrong thing. I could stop him, but I don't want you to stop him. I don't want you to stop him, because you have a disqualification. So according to my rules, you shouldn't stop him. And if he wants to be stopped, Kodesh Baruch Hu wants to stop him, he'll get somebody else to stop him. It doesn't depend upon me. Aaron should have said, Kodesh Baruch Hu said that I shouldn't do this, shouldn't do it. It's going to be a bigger crime. Kodesh Baruch Hu will deal with it. One way or the other, he'll deal with that. That's what he should have done. You're not responsible for running the world. You're responsible for playing the role that Kodesh Baruch Hu assigns you to play in the world. That's the bottom line. Okay.